In the previous lecture, we have discussed that machine learning algorithms can be broadly divided into three categories: supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning. In supervised learning, we give the computer a dataset with what is called a target variable. That's whether or not the person had heart disease or did not have heart disease. We then give a series of input variables. The modeling algorithms automatically generates the model, which establishes a relationship between the target and the input variables. In other words, you give the inputs, and along with the input, you give the outcome. Unsupervised learning is a search for homogeneous subsets that produces one or more possible segmentations of the data that differ by how similar the cases are within the segment and how many subsets there are and how common or rare they are. The whole idea of homogeneous is just put similar cases together. Now, the computer will help you do the search. But you have to decide how similar is similar enough for your application. You have to decide how many subsets you want there to be. And you have to decide how rare or common the subsets are going to be. Unsupervised is actually more difficult for the human analyst than supervised in many cases. For instance, take a look. Let's just say we were asking our computer to perform unsupervised segmentation on these blocks. Should we separate them so that they're blue and non-blue? Or maybe red and non-red? Should we be focusing on shape, or is that less important? Should we be focusing on size? It's probably impossible to answer outside some context. So, the computer will help group, but only in partnership with a human analyst that knows what the goal of the segmentation will be. So sometimes, we do see definitions of unsupervised learning that make it seem like it's pretty much supervised, but when you can't find a target variable, or you don't have ready access to a target variable. It's actually a very different set of goals when we do unsupervised learning. The third area of machine learning is called reinforcement learning. Only recently has this been a source of confusion, mostly because of two application areas that have gotten a lot of excitement. Technologies like driverless cars and technologies like the one that was able to beat the world champion at Go, these operate in a very different way. At first, they sound like supervised. But they're quite different. What's happening here is you're not presenting the algorithm with a very large number of input and output pairs. Rather, it's working in an environment and it's correct and incorrect not for each row of data, but it's rather rewarded for correct actions it takes in the environment. This is the kind of technology that arises for very cool things like watching a robot stumble, and then as it practices it gets better. Next, let's try and understand unsupervised machine learning. Put simply, this is the process of taking a lot of unstructured data, running it through lots of compute, and somehow getting structured data out of it. Example, let's say that in a room there are 5 people talking with each other. That's a lot of unstructured data, but everybody's voice is like a thumbprint. So just by having a computer analyze it, we could split that into individual audio streams. Or, let's say we have lots of documents, and we wish to be able to categorize them. But we don't know how many categories, but we want to categorize them. Or, you got lots of pictures, and you want to find similarities between those pictures. This is not just recognizing faces, so let's say person X appears in these pictures. That's a very common application, but it could also be how many pictures are daytime or nighttime. How many pictures have bright lights in them? How many pictures have modern buildings versus nature? These are various categories. So, these are various examples of unsupervised machine learning. At a high level, you can think of unsupervised learning as something that where data points have no labels associated with them. So you don't know what categories these will fall into. The goal is to somehow organize the data to make sense of it. The important point here is that unsupervised machine learning can often be a precursor to supervised machine learning. Example that we have 5 people talking, and we get individual audio streams out of them. Now that you have split those audio streams, perhaps, we can try and find out what language they're talking in. What is the sentiment? We can analyze the text, try and gain meaning or knowledge out of what they were talking about. All of that then gets into supervised machine learning.